Hi, this is Mrs. Jackson. This is Chapter 3, Section 6, Part 3. In the last video, we talked about the end behavior of polynomial graphs. Specifically, are they going up or down on the left and right sides? And in order to determine that, we looked at the sign of the leading coefficient, and we looked at the degree, whether it be even or odd. Sometimes the function is not in standard form. It may be already in factored form. So this quick video is going to show you how to determine whether that degree is even or odd and what that leading coefficient sign is going to be. Okay, so to determine the degree and the sign of that leading coefficient, if it's already in factored form, all we're going to do is just multiply each of the terms with the highest exponents. So we're going to multiply them all together. Okay, so if we have an example like this, I'm going to home right in on it here. If we have an example like this, if I were to actually multiply or take x minus 2, this binomial, to the power of 3, and take that result and multiply that all out by this binomial squared, and then finally multiply that all out by another binomial, we'd be here all day. It would be so much work, and I would need multiple pages of paper. But I don't need to do all of that work in order to figure out that first term. So what we're going to do just to find that first term is we're going to take this coefficient out here in the front, that's a factor, and we're going to look at this. No matter what, if I take x minus 2 to the power of 3, I'm going to have lots of terms, but I know that first term is going to be x cubed. Likewise, this term here, if I take this binomial and I square it, we know that first term is going to be x squared. And finally here, this power on this last binomial is just an invisible 1, so I really just have an x term there. So if I look at this whole thing for the first term only, I've got 2 out front. I'm going to end up here multiplying that by an x cubed. Then I'm multiplying that by an x squared. And finally, I have this x here. And so their product here of all of these factors is going to be my first term. I don't need to do all that distribution for that first term. So I have 3 x's, 2 more x's, and 1 more. So this whole thing is going to be 2x to the 6. So my degree is even. My leading coefficient is positive. And so on the left side of the graph, in other words, x is approaching negative infinity, that negative number raised to an even power is going to result in positive, and a positive times a positive 2 is also going to be positive. So our output is trending up. If I put in a big number for x, in other words, on the right side, I am trending x towards positive infinity. That raised to an even exponent is going to be a big positive number times a positive 2. That output on the right is also going up. And so ultimately, our end behavior for this graph is going to be up on the left and up on the right. All right, so let's take a look at a second example. So again, all we need to concern ourselves is the first term here. This time I have a negative, it's kind of like a negative 1x out front. And if I did all of my distribution, that first term of x plus 3 raised to the 5th power is going to give me an x to the 5th power. And here I have x to the 1. And so if I take a look at the result of their product, I have a negative 1, I have 1x, 2x, plus 5, I've got x to the 7th power. So in this case, we have an odd degree. We have a leading coefficient that's negative. So if we take a look at how this is going to trend on the left side, in other words, x is approaching negative infinity. If I put in a very, very small number, a negative number, negative 100, negative 1,000, If I raise that to a power that is odd, the result is going to be negative. So put that number in there, you're going to get a negative. And when I take that negative times a negative, my output is going to trend positive. In other words, up. On the right-hand side, x is approaching some big number, positive infinity. Put a big number here in for x, and I get an even bigger positive number. That positive number multiplied by a negative coefficient is going to give me a negative output. In other words, down. So ultimately, the result here on the left-hand side, we're going to be up, and on the right-hand side, we're going to be down. All right, this is a quick little video to help you figure out what that first term looks like without doing all of that distribution. You can just look at those first terms in each of the factors and what their exponent is being raised to, and you can just simply multiply all of those terms together, and that's going to give you your first term in your polynomial. Okay, thanks for listening. I hope this helps.